Hey everybody, Shane here. Hey, look, you've heard me talking about my friends at Joseph Meyer Club, and I want you to go over, check them out at josephmeyerclub.com today and try out their brand new aftershave. And if you use my promo code RPPJMC20, you can try it today with 20% off. So just enter that code at checkout. Again, RPPJMC20 at checkout at josephmeyerclub.com. And yeah, it's a great product. I've been using it myself and I love it, and it smells great. And so check it out and for all your aftershave needs. Again, josephmeyerclub.com. Follow them on Facebook as well for more information. And yeah, tell them Shane sent you. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Shane Presley here with Rock Paper Podcast. Let me tell you about my friends over at Naked Vine, located at 1624 Clarkson Road in Chesterfield, Missouri, serving up all your favorite wine, whiskey, tequila, and local craft beers. Stop by and visit them this weekend for some great live music. On Friday, Lily B. Moonflower, and Saturday, Grass Fed Mule. I returned to Naked Vine on March 12th with my good friends Brad No, Jenny Rokas, and Andrew Ryan for my singer-songwriter storytelling showcase. Again, we do that every second Tuesday of the month out there at Naked Vine. Find the full calendar and details at nakedvine.net. Be sure to follow along on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the show.
Podcast is kind of like it's like a radio show that's not on the radio. It's on the internet. Does that make sense? Uh-huh. Yeah. That's also like my mom. It makes it sound more confusing, doesn't it? It sounds like this.
Hey, we're Nothing Still, and you're listening to Rock Paper Podcast.
Rock Paper Podcast. Rock Paper Podcast. Rock Paper Podcast, y'all.
Watch the dance floor's on fire tonight, so it doesn't matter where we go. It's you and me all through the night. Feel the sound of our dance floor radio. The dance floor's on fire tonight. Sober up and down the disco. We're dancing until the morning light. Feel the sound of the dance floor radio. The dance floor's on fire tonight. Sober up and down the disco. We're dancing until the morning light. Feel the sound of the dance floor radio. The dance floor radio. The dance floor radio. The dance floor's on fire tonight. Sober up and down the disco. We're dancing until the morning light. Feel the sound of the dance floor radio.
Hey everybody, Shane Presley here, Rock Paper Podcast, coming to you from St. Louis, Missouri. Hanging out today with the guys of Nothing Still.
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome to the show, guys.
What's up?
You guys want to properly introduce yourselves for everyone?
Yeah, I'm Emilio. I'm the vocalist and rhythm guitarist.
And I'm Patrick. I'm the drummer.
Yeah, man, this is cool because it's our first time meeting and getting to, get to know each other a little more. And I've just recently started discovering the band, so that's what's been even cooler, like to kind of get into a deep dive into what you guys were doing and stuff, and now in doing again. So was I guess I was trying to do some timeline kind of stuff in my head, and I was like, I think like, I don't know, I was probably right in that area is when I started really when like your guys' last record came out and stuff, like when that was right around the time when I started kind of really deep diving into our local music and stuff. But I must have just missed you guys crossing paths and stuff there, and like so it's kind of cool that our worlds kind of aligned, years later. But I discovered Patrick more through the video stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where we started becoming friendly online and your work with that. So it's cool to learn that you played also and everything else. So like I said, I thought this would be fun to sit down and talk and discover and get to know more about all that stuff and some of those times and what you guys are up to today. We are right after. Last night you guys just played Delmar Hall with Stabbing Westward.
Yeah.
Another big night over there. So let's talk about that night since it's fresh. You guys.
I don't know as much fresh as it is hazy after last night, but it was an awesome night. We had a great time there. It was a great turnout too, even for the weather. The way it was last night.
Yeah, it's so vintage Nothing Still that we would, we're doing shows, once every few months now, maybe 2-3 shows a year, and here we are. We spend 2 months promoting the hell out of a show, and then the day of there's a snowstorm coming. Right. It's like great,
yeah,
cool. But it was great. It was an amazing turnout. I think it did close to 500 people. It was a packed house. And people were cool enough to brave the weather and get down there and support us, and especially support Stabbing Westward, which is why we were there. But yeah, it was great. I mean, Delmar Hall is a venue that went up after I moved to Los Angeles. I think in 2016 they built it, and so I've never been there, let alone seen a show there.
All right.
But we come from the waning days of Mississippi Nights. Like we played Mississippi Nights from 2003, I think. 2003 all the way till when it closed. And when Nights closed, I mean, we were literally the last guys in there as they were taking stuff out. And we had the privilege of not only getting like bricks from the building, but like I have pieces of the stage. We actually took the toilet seat from the dressing room, which has since been lost to the ether. Like we have no idea where that went.
I got tasked to pick up chandeliers from at the time who was kind of our producer, was getting a bunch of pieces of it. So yeah, I got tasked to pick up bar chandeliers from Mississippi Nights and pack them in my car.
But we were like, because we were a part of Amp STL SGM Records in the 2000s, which was, if you didn't know about it, it was like the local label to be a part of. And I mean, they were basically throwing huge shows bi-monthly, sometimes twice a week or something at Mississippi Nights. And we were represented, and we were on the SGM Records label proper. And so it was a really cool opportunity when Mississippi Nights closed. I mean, we had the drum riser from Mississippi Nights brought into our rehearsal space. And so I was playing on that same I was rehearsing on that same riser 3 nights a week. So that was really, really special as well. But so Delmar Hall basically is now filling this void that Mississippi Nights has left behind for 12 years now, I think.
It's been forever.
So it was cool. It was cool to play that size venue again.
Sure. I think, I'm hoping you guys would share some more of those stories of Mississippi Nights, because like I missed that whole thing. Like I graduated in 2003, so like and so like I know like I was around that. I could have been going to those shows, but I hadn't quite got into going to a lot of live music yet until like shortly after high school and stuff. So I missed that whole thing, but I've heard obviously many stories, The Urge and all these guys, their stories and stuff about playing there and all these different things. And I've heard stuff about too that Delmar Hall is sort of reminiscent, and even in like saying the size and stuff, but like definitely not the ceilings are much taller and everything else, and not as a. But I've heard there were a lot of people kind of saying it was kind of almost. Kind of modeled after a little bit of.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely noticed that a lot last night. It was my first time there. For even living here, I just don't get a chance to go out to many shows, and there were a lot of things that I noticed that are really kind of reminiscent of that, like with the tiered levels, like the way the Mississippi Nights had, and like the ramps that went down to like the main floor, even down to like really small details of like. They have like angles on the sides of the stage, which like for some reason that's something that I always remember about the way Mississippi Nights was set up. They had these angles on the side of the stage that I don't see at a lot of venues, but it's just the tiny little details that really did kind of make it a nice little mishmash of between the pageant and Mississippi Nights, like they had a child.
The unique thing about Mississippi Nights in this town is that it was like generational. You don't see a lot of venues that have that kind of lasting ability, but it was around for so long that you have, not only are there so many, I mean, influential bands in pop culture that came through there in early days, but just on a local level. Like there's so many waves of bands that came through, whether it was like, I mean, I can't speak too far beyond, but like Pale Divine in the early 90s to The Urge in the mid 90s, Gravity Kills, then getting into Big Blue Monkey, Story of the Year, Ludo, and so everybody kind of has their own Mississippi Nights. Stir, so whenever there's a Mississippi Nights reunion show, I always see the bands that are playing, and you really can't discredit anybody because everybody kind of has like what their generation of that club was. So for us, it was the mid 2000s basically, and we were in it all the way down to the end. I think like we played our last show there a month before it closed.
I think so.
And then like I said, we were literally some of the last people in the building before they tore it down.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And so those pieces that I mean, that place was mythic, I mean, like I just remembered all the stories I heard when bands would come into town, they would play there. But I was never old enough to go, like in the 90s, like it was Marilyn Manson played there, just fucking who knew, Green Day probably played there. I mean, like everybody came through. And I was never old enough. And I think the first show I went to was Dope, Orgy. Or no, I'm saying in the wrong order. It was Dope, Videodrome, and Orgy was the headliner. That was the first show I ever went to Mississippi Nights, and I remember going in there, and it was like, this is a rock club. This is what rock clubs are supposed to be. Right. You know, it's like Emilio was saying, like the multi-tiered. There was the under 21 side, the over 21 side. There were 2 bars. There was a whole merch section. It was great. And so it just had that mythic quality to it. And so the first time we played there in Nothing Still, it was really strange because we were actually support for a band's CD release show. And we were just kind of in our first or second year and like did not have our shit together whatsoever. We were in a very like primordial version of Nothing Still, and we outsold the headlining band. And so the promoters were like, "You're going on last." And we're like, "What do you mean we're going on last?" They're like, "We need people drinking all night long." And you sold more tickets than the fucking CD, the band releasing their CD tonight, so you're going on last. And so literally, no bullshit, the first show we ever played at Mississippi Nights, we headlined. Yeah. And, I mean, we were not good.
It was, out of the many iterations of this band, yeah, we've definitely had downs from the beginning. It was definitely down at the beginning if you compare to what things were whenever we started. I mean, venue wise, I mean, getting the break to do Mississippi Nights was probably the best thing that could have happened to us, because I mean, there weren't venues. There were like tiers of venues almost. It was like you can go and play your Creepy Crawl if you really wanted to. You know, the original Creepy Crawl.
The Creepy Crawl was always your first step in because it was the easiest to get a gig at.
Yeah.
And like people who've gotten this far in the show or who probably aren't familiar with our music, or if you've played anything for them already on the show, I don't know. But like, to give you some backstory of where we come from, I mean, we came out of in the late 90s, like the nu metal phase, and there was sort of a thing. There was like nu metal. It came from hair metal. And it was like a lot of your people that you were into, if you were in the Korn, or if you were in the Limp Bizkit or the Deftones especially, the Deftones were obsessed with 80s new wave, The Cure especially, or the Smiths. And so once you started going hand in hand with those things, they started revealing themselves. So it happened to me. I was always really into... I've always been into bands that put on performance, like not just like typically about the music. I've always been interested in like the show, and so I've always been attracted to bands like Kiss, David Bowie, Motley Crue, and I got really into. I mean, I got it. The band that really stirred me in a direction was Orgy. I was obsessed with Orgy. And I was like, that's the kind of band I want to do. And I was in this nu metal band. So I was doing music that was quite opposite of that. And I was also 14 years old. I mean, I was 14 years old playing in the Creepy Crawl before I was even in high school. And the first show that I played ever at the Creepy Crawl was actually with Big Blue Monkey, a very like early version of Big Blue Monkey, where Ryan Phillips and Dan were actually, like, Dan was playing drums. He wasn't even the lead singer of the band.
Right.
And that was kind of so it was like I did that for a couple years with this band, and we broke up. I mean, we did, like we got through the ranks of like doing pops and all kinds of stuff and playing festivals, but like it didn't really go anywhere. And then in the fall of 2000, I think we broke up, and I was really down and out. And I was like, I'm finally gonna make that Orgy band that I want to make. And I was home one night, and my mom had just gone to see Prince. Prince came into town. And she came back and she was raving. She's like, oh, you would have loved it. Prince this, Prince that. And as a teenager, like, all I knew of Prince was like whatever was in the kind of lexicon of like Prince, you know, that you knew about. And so I had a VHS copy of Purple Rain laying around. And so I popped that in and I watched Purple Rain for the first time ever. And I was just mesmerized. I was like, that's what I want to do. When I watched The Revolution, I was like, that's what I want to do. And then a couple months after that, there was a really amazing band in St. Louis called Die Symphony. And Die Symphony was like what we knew. For us, there was like Gravity Kills. If I'm talking about like 80s influence, industrial, 90s industrial,
Right.
like Gravity Kills was doing it. There was another band called Full System Purge. And then Die Symphony. So once Gravity Kills took off, I said with Die Symphony was like the band. And Die Symphony would own shows at Mississippi Nights. And the cool thing about Die Symphony is they had like their own lights. They had fucking fire. And it's like you got to see a show. And they were a local band. And everybody knew. You go to Sam Goody, they'd have their CDs there. You get a Die Symphony CD. And it was like, that's the band to go see. And so as in May of 2001... I went to Mississippi Nights to see Die Symphony play, and there was a band from Chicago on the show called Kill Hannah. And I watched these guys play, and I was just obsessed. I was like, that's the band I want. So it was these two events for me. It was watching Purple Rain and seeing how cool the Revolution were, and the mystique of that, and then seeing Kill Hannah for the first time. And when I saw Kill Hannah, I knew what the band had to be. It was kind of those things, you know? Like, I knew I wanted to make this orgy-type band, but I didn't know how to do it because I'm 17 years old, and I don't have money, and I don't have technology. But then when these two things happened, I knew that was the kind of the birth of Nothing Still. And so I had been, in between bands, I had been jamming with some guys, and that was just kind of the start of it. And I actually had a name before anything happened. I was still in high school. And I walked into my airbrush class one day, and the teacher said, "Hey, Slusser, what's the name of your band this week?" And sometimes I say things backwards. So instead of me saying, "Oh, it's still nothing," I said, "Oh, it's Nothing Still." And he goes, "Oh, wow, that's a pretty cool band name." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Nothing Still. It's a pretty cool band name." And so I went back to my desk and I wrote it on a piece of paper, and I still have the piece of paper to this day. I wrote Nothing Still down, and it stuck. And so we were able to get some guys together, and I'd say probably the next turning point for the band really was Emilio joining, and it was like the week after 9/11. And I remember Emilio came to try out, and I just remember they were having that like tribute to heroes, I don't want to say marathon. What would they call those things? Telethon. Yeah, it was like the tribute to heroes telethon was on TV, and like Bon Jovi was on there and stuff. And I just remember that, and like that was kind of like as the band was starting around that time. And so it took us a while to finally like get up and running, but we ended up going to SGM Records to record because they just offered recording services, and they were doing huge shows. And we had these raw songs that we thought were great. And we thought, it's very Depeche Mode. It's very cool. Like, we thought it was very current, you know, but it really wasn't. And we went into the studio with these tracks, and our producer, Kevin Gerdes, saw potential in them. I mean, we already thought they were great, and they weren't. And he's like, yeah, there's something here. And I think that, like, he was working with a bunch of bands that were all doing hard rock stuff at the time.
Like a lot of screamo and stuff like that.
Unchained, The Fifth Element, yeah. And so they were doing a lot of like, there was a little bit of pop punk that was going on too. And so he was like, hey, here's something I can play with and mold, especially like the 80s influence side. And so in one night, we cut the single for Lovesick.
To save you from his
and Away From You, and maybe not in one night, but I mean, it was like, it felt like it was that quick, but
it was fast.
It was
for
real
sure.
fast, yeah. And that shaped it, because we didn't know what we were, and he heard it and said, I could do something with this.
Right.
And so we had the song Lovesick, and then he like made the beat, or he made the track for it. And it just came together so fast, and all of a sudden we were hearing ourselves for the first time, which is such a strange phenomenon. But that's what a good producer does.
Right.
A good producer hears raw material and then molds it into something that's useful. And that's what was happening to us. And so then we knew. And so then we had to adapt our sound based off of that. So by the time that was going, we really got up and running, I'd say, in like 2003. So we'd started, when you see like our t-shirts, it says established 2001. That's literally when the band started. But I would say we really got up and running. We really started playing a shitload of shows around 2003.
No, for sure. It was crazy. I mean, coming into it, I didn't really know what to think when I came to audition for the band. I'm sure Patrick always tells his stories so much better, and it's always great. But the way he describes me showing up to the tryout, but basically we had a mutual friend that had that was in a band with one of my good friends, and they're like, oh well, you know, our friend's band is looking for a singer and a guitar player, and I was jamming with a guy, so we actually decided to both try out as separate. As I was going to try out for vocalist, he was going to try out for guitars, and he was not quite the type to fit the style of the way that the band wanted to go. He was a very big metalhead, listened to Slipknot pretty much like nonstop.
Yeah.
Played like a flying V guitar and stuff like that, and so for me coming into it was very odd, because I didn't know. The funny thing about it is that with that Die Symphony show that Patrick was just talking about with Kill Hannah, is that I was at that show as well, with the girl that I was dating, and I remember just kind of being taken aback by that was one of my first times. I think that was my first time seeing Die Symphony. It was the first time seeing Kill Hannah, and it was such a cool, like, unique thing that you don't hear very much. And then the same thing goes for me, is that I was, you know, I was always really 80s influenced. You know, I got late into the game with getting into bands like The Cure and Depeche Mode and Smiths and stuff like that, and seeing that kind of like revitalization come out in those bands was really cool. So coming to join this band was like, okay, well, I'm going to try out, and I don't really know what I'm going to do. And so I tried out with an Orgy song, and yeah, it was unique, because I had never fronted a band before. I was always play guitar for bands, and
he couldn't look at us while he was trying out. He had to stare. I had a Subway-sized poster of Duran Duran on my wall, and he stared at the Duran Duran poster, and I think he's saying Stitches by Orgy and probably Pictures of You or something by The Cure.
Yeah, it was. It was a weird thing, and it's funny because it still kind of carries over to this day. Like I do have pretty bad stage fright, and I don't particularly like performing in front of people because of just anxiety. You know, it's just kind of life at that point. But it's something I had to adjust to pretty quickly. You know, it's like, well, I didn't choose this profession to just have anxiety through it all and just be terrified all the time. You know, and which is funny because now, like, if you see us perform, like, I still turn back to him whenever we perform. But, you know, I have a really good ways now of being able to work with the crowds and stuff like that. But trying out was really cool. And basically, you know, they were like, well, but you can play guitar too. So, like, kind of just want, like, one package instead of getting both. And starting that from there out was just really unique, because I feel like everybody in the band at the time, everybody wanted something different from the band.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I think everybody wanted to be in a cool band, and we knew we were doing something cool. We just really didn't know what it was. And then, like you're saying, everybody kind of thought it was something else.
Yeah. And so when it came down to getting and cutting those first demos, you know, when we actually got to SGM, was just It was so unique to finally just like hear some like a molded product, you know, doing exactly what a producer would do to bring a new sound, something that you didn't hear much of in this city, you know, especially in this city, you know. And yeah, I think it was a great experience for all of us, for sure, with it, and a learning experience on top of it, to realize that, hey, yeah, you guys actually didn't know shit the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, you thought you did, but you no, this is actually the way that it really should be, and it kind of clicked. It's like, no shit, no, that's right. Like that definitely was the way it should have been. Like we should have been thinking this way, and you know, I mean, there's a reason why "Lovesick" is still a song that we play in our sets. You know, because it's a defining song for us, and always has been.
You can go to Spotify or iTunes Music right now and look up "Lovesick" by Nothing Still, and that's what we cut.
Yeah,
that's from 2003, and it just, the album that we released it on just turned 15 years old 2 days ago. It's nuts, but yeah, I would say, to skip ahead, our big thing was like we were built of 2 guitarists, a drummer, and a keyboardist, and we never had a bass player, and so there was a lot of like revolving doors in terms of like who could pick up, you know, that section. And we had a really good friend that I went to high school with, and he ended up he was always kind of like in and out of circles with other bands, and he ended up interning with SGM Records. And Kevin said, "Why don't you get Tommy to play?" And we were like, "Yeah, Tommy." We didn't ever think about, because Tommy was always like into like Rage Against the Machine, but he was a really good funk bass player, and that's the kind of thing that, like, even though you were into that kind of new metal, however you want to describe that kind of music, but like there's a funkiness to Rage Against the Machine, and even though that was something that he was really influenced in, he could come in and play funk bass to our 4 on the Floor dance lines. And we loved Tommy because he's just so fun to be around, and he's a naturally funny person.
And the funny thing, I mean, even looking at it like that, I mean, he cut those first demos.
Yeah, he was engineering on those demos, and that's how he knew the songs. And so when Kevin pointed to him and said, "What about Tommy?" we were like, "Yeah, what about Tommy? Like, let's do it." And he's been in the band ever since. And he's still like, I mean, I think he's our secret weapon in a lot of ways. I mean, we each have our own strengths. And with Tommy, we were blessed because not only is he just an incredible bass player, but he's just an incredible, like, his mind works unlike anybody I know. He thinks very mechanically. And so he's been our tech guru. He's been our mechanic on the road. He's really, really saved our ass time and time and again. I mean, even yesterday, we're scrambling to make sure we've got all the cords we need, and he's sitting there soldering shit together and making sure that we've got the stuff that make the show. I mean, you look at our show from last night, and we've got intelligent lighting on stage, but what the audience doesn't know is he's the one controlling it. So he's sitting on stage tapping his foot on a pedal that controls our intelligent lighting going off so that it's always in the rhythm of the song. And Stabbing Westward was like they couldn't believe it. They were like, "You trust your bass player to do that?" I'm like, "I wouldn't trust anybody else in the band to do it."
Yeah, he's incredible and incredibly smart, and a lot smarter than he gives himself credit for. He is. He's my guitar tech on top of all of it too. Works on any equipment and stuff like that we have broken down. But man, when it comes to music, he has this kind of natural feel to it, and even after all this time, and there's been long gaps, when we weren't playing and that, and coming back and doing it again, it's like we never stopped, and he's always been really good about picking that stuff right back up again.
So, what, mentioning that, like, the gap there, like, what was all that about? Like, what was it, a lot of Pat moving, or was
Well, what happened for us is that So I would say like we really finally hit our stride around 2006. We were just in and out of doing cool shows and being part of the scene, and STL Punk, being around. Were you on STL Punk?
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah. Somehow, I mean, here we are. We're in the thick of this like St. Louis music scene that was very much pop punk, and I mean, Story of the Year were the Kings, and here we are. We're this like techno new wave 80s dance band in the middle of all this shit, but are somehow putting this rock edge on it, and we're constantly in the top 20 of top songs on STL Punk. I mean, Magnum Girl was like number 1 for a couple weeks for a while there. and so we're on every show. Every time there's a big festival show in town, we're a part of it. We're up there with Westcott, Rushmore Academy, all the big bands, Centerpoint, and word just started getting around, and we just started to hit big shows. And then so right around 2006, 2005, we found ourselves out of a guitarist again. And so we put the word out, and we were auditioning people, and nobody was really hitting the mark. And then one day we took a call from this kid, Anthony, and he had been in a band that I had been around, I get a little bit, but we had never really played with, so we weren't familiar with him. And he came in and he knew every song and fucking blew us away in the audition. Just shredding. One of the most unbelievably gifted natural lead guitarist I've ever seen. And just in one, I mean, we walked in all high and mighty like, whoa, we're the band, you're auditioning for us. And he just fucking laid into it and played our songs, just nailed it.
Yeah, just phenomenal in every way, shape, and form.
And so
it was such a point too where like I feel like all of us at that point were like about to just give up trying to find, because the callbacks that we were getting and the auditions that we were getting were just like, there's no way these people can be serious. There's no way.
Yeah.
Like there's no way that, and as unfortunate as it is, there is, and not to sound like assholes about it, but there's an image that we have, and there's an image that we kind of choose to uphold, that we need to uphold with it. So that's another part that's going to come with it. There's just some people that you're going to click with.
Sure.
And if you don't have that click, then it's not going to work. And Anthony coming into it for being just a shy kid, like he was younger than all of us. I mean, he was like 16 or something?
I think you're a year younger than me. I think he's a year younger than you. So he's 2 years younger than me.
He's even younger than that.
Yeah.
Anthony, if you're listening, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Anthony. We don't know how old you are.
But, that's, it's one of those things of like, man, this kid just came in and just blew us away. And he was super, like, he was really shy. Like, he didn't really know much about the world as we knew it at that point. And so, having him, it was one of those things. It was just an immediate click. Like,
yeah, we'd already been through the ringer a little bit.
Yeah.
So that makes up the core of Nothing Still. That's that. I wanted to get to that before we got too far. So that's Emilio, myself, Tommy, and Anthony, and so that's the core of Nothing Still. And so in 2006, we really hit the ground running with the four of us. I mean, we were playing Warped Tour. We released our second album, Black Tie Affair. The Riverfront Times called us the hardest working band in St. Louis, and off of that, we started getting pageant shows, and it was around that time that we brought on a second guitarist, Matt Kleeman, and he was a really good friend of ours who had been in another band called Our First Summer, and we had gotten in really good with him, and we had an opportunity to bring him in and take the guitar away from Emilio for the first time, and with rhythm guitar, and he also added unbelievable harmonies, and so it just blew up the sound of the band, and so we went on like that for a couple more years and did a couple more big shows, opening up for Ludo at their Christmas show in 2007. And, we went on selling out venues like Off-Broadway in 2008. And we recorded our third album. And then that's when I would say the scene started to take a dive. Bands started petering off. And unfortunately for us, the heaviest thing happened, and Matt died in a car crash.
Oh man!
in December of 2009, and we were about to head out of the country for the first time for a series of shows the following week. And so we were posed with a very delicate situation because basically we had now become this band that was a 5-piece, and that was how we operated. And so we knew that we could fall back on being a 4-piece again, but there was going to be a massive hole. And but we felt like we owed it to Matt that we had to go and do that tour, and because he would have kicked our asses if we hadn't done it. And so we decided to go back to being a 4-piece. We rehearsed for a few days before leaving for the tour, and then we went and did that. And then we came back the next year. We continued playing as a 4-piece. We were nominated for Riverfront Times Music Award, and then it just kind of started dying off. So so we went strong for the better part of 10 years, and I finished my degree in film, started working in the film industry. Emilio really got into DJing, and everybody kind of split off into doing their own things. And eventually, I got to the point I moved to Los Angeles. And so we played in 2011, we played a show in 2014, and then last year, just completely out of the blue, we were offered an opportunity to play this festival, this Rock the Vote festival. And we'd been fielding offers for the last couple of years to get back together, and it just was they never really came to fruition. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I could speak for myself. Like, I've gotten to the point in just filmmaking where I've gotten really bored in a way, because a lot of my job is taking other people's ideas and making them even better. And I was just getting to the point where I didn't feel like I had a creative outlet. And I haven't been playing music. I mean, in my opinion, I always said that Nothing Still would be the last band I would ever be in, because it was just so much work. I've been in 2 bands, and the first one was hard enough, but all the work we put in the Nothing Still, I didn't want to ever have to do that again. So when we started entertaining this idea about doing this Rock the Vote festival last year, it was refreshing. It was refreshing to like see some of the excitement. Everybody was kind of at a point in their life where we were free to do it. I wasn't booked on anything. Everybody else kind of had open availability in their schedule, and it started as, we'll do the show. What songs are we going to play? And then the next thing, it was like, you guys want to write some new songs? And then it just all of a sudden became really serious. Yeah. And we started having a discussion. We started having this discussion about how, like, where we are at in life, because where we're at in our early 30s compared to where we were as like teenagers and in our 20s, right. Like, we have a lot more opportunities available to us now, a lot more connections, and a lot more things like just self-distribution in itself is something we didn't have in 2004, 2005, 2006. And we can do so much. We don't have to think locally. We can think globally now. And all of these things really appealed, especially to me. And I know you'd already been doing it with Serbsican, and it was like, why not? Like, why not? Like, maybe we can't play 20 shows a year, but we can play 2 or 3 really fucking good ones. Yeah, man. And we can spend the rest of our time writing new music and getting out there and exposing ourselves to people who don't know who we are. Mm-hmm. And, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, when I listened to the last record, like I said, everything's on Spotify and all that. Now, but I was listening, and like, I definitely picked up on some of those, like, that dance influence, like you guys are talking about and stuff. But like, it didn't feel dated at all. You know, it's like, it's not like it feels like, like, and the production on it too was what stood out to me. Like, the recording sounds incredible. So
Thank you.
Like, so it sounds, especially for, considering a local band, sometimes you don't always get the best production on some of those recordings and things, but there was a lot. You could tell there was a lot of effort into the recording of it, so it still holds up, even though that record, like I was saying, like 10 years now.
Yeah, I got a feeling I slept through before. Yeah, that's that 10-year-old record, but we recorded that at Sawhorse Studios with Jason McEntire.
Yeah, Jason's the man.
Yeah, and he did Ludo's first record and the Broken Bride EP, and we were coming off of doing that Ludo show, and we had the opportunity to meet him, and he was like, "Yeah, I want to work with you guys." Yeah. And we spent an entire month in June of 2008 recording that album. We lived out of that studio.
Yeah.
And it really...
Friend of the show. I'm a big fan of Jason's work.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, girl, but I have to leave. I'm off to the fight of the century. The streets are empty, the time is right to own this city just one last night. But I can't help it, I'm alive with the stars that are falling from the sky. This night is ours, I have to defend, even though tonight may be the end. I'm sorry, girl, but I gotta run. We are headed straight for the sun. The hourglass is short on time. This night will end with a twist of light. There's nothing more that I can say, but we can dance the night away. The streets on fire, but so's the floor. They said it's the end, but I want more. There's nothing more that I can say, but baby, we'll dance the night away. The streets on fire, but so's the floor. They said it's the end, but I want more. I'm sorry, but I gotta leave. The hourglass is short on time. This night will end with a twist of light tonight. There's nothing more that I can say, but we can dance the night away. The streets on fire, but so's the floor. They said it's the end, but I want more. There's nothing more that I can say, but baby, we'll dance the night away. The streets on fire, but so's the floor. They said it's the end, but I want more. I can't help it, I'm alive with those stars that are falling from the sky. This night is ours, I have to defend, even though tonight may be the end.
Yeah, and in terms of like the sound, I mean, here's what I get all the time. Like people are like, because back in LA, people only know me from what I do in the film industry, and when you say like, oh, I used to be in a band, it's almost like a joke. It's like a side note. It's like, oh, ha 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 ha. But then when people are like, well, what did you guys sound like? It's hard to explain because in a way, like some of it is like it's of a time, but like the best way that I like to describe it to people is that we were the Killers before the Killers happened. And my favorite story is we were doing a college radio interview, I think in 2004, and they were asking us, hey, like, what kind of songs you guys want to play in between interviews? And we're like, oh, I don't know, like maybe this or that. And they're like, have you heard this new song from The Killers? And we're like, no. And it was Somebody Told Me, their first single. And I just remember them putting that on and being like, they fucking beat us to it.
Yeah.
Like, Somebody Told Me, I think, is like the record we probably really wanted to make. And they nailed it. Like, but the thing about The Killers is that they didn't stick to that. The Killers just like, they were just so like up and down like a roller coaster.
Sure.
And like then Sam's Town went a whole nother and then that third album's a piece of shit. And then you know what I mean? But it was like that the first record where they were like fresh, coming out, dancey, straight out of Vegas. It was like, wow, that's what we've been trying to do. And then Panic at the Disco happened. And so it was really hard for us because when you were watching fan bases here locally like get amped about Panic at the Disco, and you're like, hey guys, we're a local Panic at the Disco, like
right.
Pay attention to us. And you know, it was a weird kind of thing. I don't know.
That's kind of where I'm at with doing this show. Is like, it's kind of. I mean, granted, it's not. I don't have the answer for everything, but like, if you like somebody, like I can probably link you up with somebody locally that's doing something kind of similar that you could probably dig, and you can probably go see them a couple times a year for $5 or whatever, you know, like, and you don't have to spend your $100 a ticket or whatever it is, and you might. But that's my thing is like you never know when you're gonna find your next favorite band. They could be right here, and it's like so.
That's something that I feel like is such a. And I guarantee, I know it probably happens in many other scenes, but I know St. Louis the Midwest is a very guilty scene of that. Is that we'll get excited about this large act that comes to town, but don't realize that there are 10 local acts that are equally as good, if not better, than that major act that they're going to see. But they're not going to go and support them because that's not where the masses are going. You know, and that's something that, you know, and that crosses over even to, you know, even as a DJ, as an electronic music producer, if you're not some big guy that wears a helmet or wears a mask or something like that that's playing these like huge festivals and stuff like that, they don't care about that kind of stuff. There's not enough support, I feel like, for as many people that complain about the way our scene is, whether it be in local music, whether it be in clubs, you know, no matter what, is that we're at fault for it. We did this to it because we're not supporting enough of our people to bitch about the way our scene has become and our local music scene has become. It's our fault. We did this to it. Yeah. And we're the only ones who can make it, who can bring it back again.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think a lot of it has to do with the internet. I think that the internet has allowed progressively, especially now, it has allowed fan bases to kind of be like armchair supporters. I think even more so now, because in the 90s, I mean, like, that's how bands like The Urge, Fragile Porcelain Mice, Stir, Pale Divine, I mean, they all caught fire by word of mouth. Gravity Kills, you know?
Yeah, you had to go to the show to see it. You couldn't. Yeah. You couldn't watch the YouTube video. You couldn't,
Everybody knew about The Urge, you know? And then in our time, I mean, it was the birth of social media. So MySpace and STL Punk especially allowed the community to spread and get it out there, and it was effective. But now, especially with what we're dealing with, trying to basically like reintroduce ourselves to the world, it's just basically like yes, heart, but there's no real like interaction, you know? And so it's something that we're having to adapt to. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I saw Panic at the Disco was here 2 weeks ago to a sold-out Enterprise Center. That's a sold-out crowd that doesn't realize that there's a band right here in town that plays exactly like. I mean, we're not as good as Panic at the Disco, but you know what I mean.
Near that.
Yeah. So I won't say that, but it's like you like that style of music. We've been doing it for 15 years. Yeah.
That was a. I forgot what I was gonna say now. Just blew,
just blew your mind with that Panic at the Disco statement.
I don't know. I was gonna say something now. I'm totally drawing a blank.
Yeah,
it's probably super important too.
I think that just in the way that social media is kind of taken to it. It's made, and I think it works on both ends because, granted, fans can be armchair. Would you say armchair
fan?
Yeah,
armchair fan base.
They can be an armchair fan base, but at the same time, bands can be equally as lazy about it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, we came from a time where we would go to shows, and I remember one night of standing next to Steve Ewing from The Urge, handing out flyers. Each of us were standing outside of Mississippi Nights handing out flyers to each of our shows.
Yeah.
And we traded flyers and stuff. I wound up going to his show, and it was like Steve Ewing just solo, and that doesn't happen. You don't see that stuff anymore. I don't go out to my car and see flyers on the car anymore. I don't get handed flyers as I'm starting to walk.
Well, when I have seen it, sometimes at the pageant they'll do it and stuff. Somebody will be out there, and then you'll find them all right around the corner on the ground. That's the thing. People just don't care. It's so, it's back then. I mean, it probably happened then too a little bit, but
it definitely did.
But people actually would oh, hey, I'll check this out.
Yeah, people wanted to see that kind of stuff because now, it's so much of okay, let's start this event page on Facebook, invite everybody,
send 100 invites, and then 16 people respond to it.
Yeah, and then of course too with Facebook algorithms, the way that they are is that as a band, you're lucky if any of your fan base is going to see that without you having to shell out all the extra money to promote it. It's such a block of it's social media in the way that they want you to do social media, and so it's a pay to play, just the same way that it always used to be with radio stations and stuff like that as a pay to play. It's exactly the same way that social media came about too. Is now if you want to be seen, you have to pay to be seen because otherwise it's just going to get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, see now I lost my train of thought. That's what we knew was going out there and just handing out flyers to shows. But for me, I think around 2007ish, I read The Dirt by Motley Crue, and they talked about 1981, they're just pounding the streets of Sunset Boulevard, poster on every telephone pole going down the street. And that's how they were able to pack the Whiskey A Go-Go. And so I went to these guys and I said, this is the shit that we have to be doing. And so we would break up. Emilio would go to one club, I would go to another. We would go to malls and just hand out CDs. And doing that shit for every show, I mean, I have friends to this day who I met just by handing them a CD outside of a show. Mm-hmm. And it really, really did. But I think what happened was the system also started working against us because eventually people started cutting down on posting bills in places and stopped giving you opportunities. So we used to go down Delmar and just plaster all of U City with Nothing Still posters. And now it's you can't. I mean, it's practically illegal to do that shit now. And like you were saying, people are standing outside of clubs, but then they're throwing them all on the ground. There's no real love for anything. There's no real connection. And so, yeah, it's tough. And so it definitely feels like there's a little bit of the system working against us.
Sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned, the STL Punk and the MySpace, and I think that also had a big part of it around that era for a lot of people with music because you could put that song on your profile or whatever and stuff. So people people heard your favorite song if you put on whatever the band was and stuff. So and that's kind of thing now about the Facebook and stuff. You don't get any of that, but it's I felt like that helped a lot too. People would immediately click on your page and they'll start hearing music, or it'd be click play over there or whatever. But that was a good way to constantly keep plugging your friends' bands and stuff too. And but I don't know. It's weird, man. It's weird how things have changed and evolved over the last several years and stuff. Is there any particular advice you guys, maybe something you guys have learned and can apply now to? Or that you want to pass along that from those days to today? We've kind of discussed some of the things that you've seen, but
it's situational.
It really is. Here's kind of my thoughts on all of this, because I know Patrick kind of brought it down as to kind of why we started doing this stuff again and why we're back to doing what we're doing. Is that there are no record deals anymore. Record deals aren't a thing anymore. When we started and when we were trying to do things, that was the goal. The goal was getting signed to a major label and having everything be that. Well, as everybody knows, and if you don't know, you've lived under a rock, the record industry is shit.
Yeah.
They're no longer able to financially support the bands that they're signing. So do what you want to do. Don't limit yourself to what you're doing. You have endless now, especially with like Spotify artists, stuff like that. You're able to get your music out to the masses without having to battle for this, record label dream of it. That's not the dream anymore. It's not. And I think that that's kind of what got us to where we are now, is that we've accepted that we're not planning on being some huge, Panic at the Disco selling out enterprise.
We're not trying to get a record deal anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't, and it sounds kind of shitty, but it's the truth. I mean, I enjoy being creative, and we all just enjoy being creative and having these outlets. This is therapy for me. This is right. I live and breathe this kind of stuff consistently, and as long as I get to be happy doing this for as long as I have, and that was a conversation that we had a long time ago. We had record label interests, at a time, and
I would love to touch on this.
But that was one of the things that we agreed upon, was that when we found out that these labels couldn't sign us as much as they wanted to, we basically had to make this decision, and I still stick to this decision to this day, is that I'll stop doing this when it stops being fun.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's never stopped being fun to me. And I'm still going to keep doing this until it does.
Dude, I'll say this, Shane.
Yeah.
The scariest my life has ever been was like, we were like a yes or a no away from like some huge deal. And I just remember, like, it was basically like it was like you could see the line in the sand of, like, this is where your life changes. And it scared the shit out of me. I remember we were being pursued by, like, the guy that managed Evanescence. No, or Flyleaf. And they had just broken huge. And so this guy was, like, up our ass about our song Magnum Girl. And I just remember that it was like, it literally came down to like a yes or no answer, and it was a no, but it was like we were sitting there waiting. I was like sitting on the floor thinking about like, holy shit, my life's about to change. And it was a no. And I was like, fuck. But that was it's like the thing, like when you're a kid and you're like, I'm going to be a rock star, I'm going to start a band, I'm going to get signed, and I'm going to have tons of money and girls, And it was like, this is it. This is that moment where, like, you're about to get signed. You're about to have a huge management deal, and things are going to change for you, And, man, I was scared shitless.
Yeah.
And this is the other thing I'll say, touching on what Emilio just mentioned. It's the climate today. I mean, I know one of the most talented, best live bands in Los Angeles. No label will fucking touch them. And it's insane. These guys saw like banger after banger after banger. I mean, just radio hits, one after another after another. Can't find a manager, have yet to be signed. That's the climate right now. Mm-hmm. So I would say, if you want to be a musician, you want to start a band, first of all, do it for the fun of it. And second of all, do a lot of research. Try to get your music out there as much as you can. Play shows sparingly. Don't overexpose yourself.
Yeah.
But make sure you're having fun. Because the other thing you got to keep in mind, too, is that a record deal is a really, really bad loan. Really bad loan.
Yeah.
And as lucrative as it's going to sound, it will really fuck you over. So it's in a lot of ways it's life-changing. In a lot of ways it'll give you everything you dreamed of. But then also in a lot of ways, I mean, here's the thing, because I deal with this a lot on the movie side of things too. And you can make a movie, you could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars making an independent film and then sell it for distribution, and then the distribution company does nothing. They don't fucking promote your movie. Nobody knows about it. It goes on demand and 20 people watch it. Record labels are doing the exact same thing, except for the problem is you have to pay back the record label.
Right.
You know, the distribution company on the movie side of things, they're buying your movie, but a record label wants their fucking money back. That's a thing nobody tells you, and that's really, really hard to swallow, especially when you have these pipe dreams of being a rock star. I think as much as I would have loved to have been Panic at the Disco, I am fortunate that I don't owe a couple $100,000 to fucking Capitol Records right now.
That's exactly kind of my thoughts on it, is that, you know, coming from, even in making electronic music and signing with labels and stuff like that, those, when you're signing singles like that, like what I'm typically doing, it's not lucrative. You're not going to see money from that. Because the thing is that these labels, and of which most are indie labels, some are a little bit more major label, but I mean, I saw a royalty check for last year, a full year. I saw a royalty check of like $25.67, and that was a label taking a song, signing it. Signing the, you know, we signed the rights away to our songs to the record labels, you know, and that's that long, a year of them pushing it to, you know, Spotify, going to all the online sites. I found that even too, like a lot of the labels are even getting that lazy, you know, just the same way that bands and artists are sitting back and just depending on social media to be what's going to get their stuff out, is that a lot of these labels are starting to do the same thing, is that they're just depending that their SoundCloud following or their YouTube following is what's going to sell their singles. But it's not. It just doesn't work like that anymore. You know, it's, you know, I had this conversation last night with Chris from Stabbing Westward, of people don't, it doesn't work like that anymore. Money is not in record deals anymore. It's not. It never, and it never really was. It's exactly like Patrick said. It's a pipe dream of, you have those visions of like, oh, you know, I get a major deal and then all of a sudden I'm gonna have all this stuff, but it doesn't work like that. You know, your money comes from your shows. Yeah. Your money comes from your merchandise. Your money comes from finding placement. If you're lucky enough to find placement in TV or movies, like, that's where your money is. But guess what? None of that is stable. You don't get, you know, like, I watch international royalties that I've had go from being, you know, a couple $100 every quarter, and I think I just got a deposit the other day for international royalties of $2.75, I think was what it was, $2.75 international royalties for a quarter, you know, and so
that's a QT to keto money. I think.
It really is, you know, and so I was eating good that night once I got that, so it was good. Yeah, but
you can get two for that price.
For bands that are trying to reach that, like, I don't know how else to say it, but fucking don't. Like, aim for doing what makes you happy. Aim for being grassroots about it, because that's what's going to get you where you actually want to be. And just be happy doing it, because you have nothing else to gain from it. You know, there's not much to gain from it.
Well, you guys said a while back something about now that you reunited and from that show, August show, and then now today you guys are working on new stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean we've rekindled the fire a little bit, and I think the first thing we had to address was we're older, but but this is how I see it.
So you guys are slowing it down and going country.
Yeah, we're taking our time with it.
We hired a pedal steel guitar player now.
Yeah.
I know that's what like Bret Michaels like he's country now. All those like hair bands are all country guys
Aaron
now.
Lewis,
yeah.
Hootie.
Yeah, Hootie.
Weird. So the funny thing was that I think all of us kind of felt like with 7 or 8 years behind us, we were like too old to do stuff. But then when we started really talking about it, we're like, wow, like a lot of the bands that we loved when in the late 90s, early 2000s were in their 30s, their early 30s,
Yeah.
exactly where we are now. And I kind of feel like we're in that like late 80s Aerosmith Walk This Way phase where it's kind of like the Renaissance, but we're like 10 years older,
Yeah.
And so we had to kind of ask ourselves, like, who are we writing for now? And also, like what is the demographic? Because we're not writing to, 16, 17, 18-year-old girls to try to get them out to shows anymore. And so now it's just more about, like, where do we want to go? Like, we want to make music that people could listen to generally, but it's still us. And also kind of sort of fits in, like, with things that are sort of, like, underground popular right now. Not necessarily mainstream, because that's where I think we'd go wrong. So we've got stuff in the works. I'd say we definitely have at least one EP on the horizon that I would say we have maybe 3/5 to 4/5 of the way kind of demoed out right now. And then we just started dropping some new bangers that we are really, really obsessed with that might become a totally separate EP. So when we started last year of like getting this thing together, we were talking about let's make the last album. Like we're gonna make the last album and the best album something that we could be proud of. Like we're not worried about like getting number one on STL Punk or trying to sell out the pageant or whatever. But like for us, it was like, let's make something that we're proud of that 10 years from now we can go back to and listen to and really love. And that's where we started. And now some of the stuff we're coming up with, we're like, wow, like that's kind of even like a more interesting direction. And so we're really going to write it out for a little bit. It's still very premature, but like, yeah, we are actively writing. And I think we've got like 5 or 6 just demo ideas out on the table right now, plus one that is really hitting that we're really excited about. So
play any of those live last night?
We did not, but we did play. I would say 3 of the tracks that are probably going to be on the first EP, if we go that route. But they are songs that like we were playing like 2010-ish, but like they're sort of like, it's just weird because we're thinking that like as a mature band that there's sort of like a heavier, darker side of Nothing Still, which is like what you see in our social media and our t-shirts now, and we really like that side of it because it just feels more mature because we have matured as musicians,
right?
And it's a more general audience for us, and so I would say we definitely have the majority of an EP ready to go for that one, but we're still trying to figure out like what the sound is that we're wanting to do. And I would say for me personally, like I mentioned, just like with age, like I am a very like full force physical drummer. I really look to like idols of like Tommy Lee, caveman drumming. And for me, it's a full-bodied experience. I am exhausted today. I don't know how the hell I would do this on a tour. We'd have to play shows every other day.
Yeah, I know.
But
like chiropractic sessions in between.
Yeah. But I don't know. Like I don't know if I could 10 years from now if I could be having the same conversation. And when I started thinking about like where we're at in life, I'm like, shit, man. Like how many bands were we into that were like most definitely in their 30s when we were like teenagers? So
yeah. That's what we mentioned Steve and the Urge. Like, I watch those guys and Steve. They still run around like kids on that stage.
Yeah.
Now. Like and Steve's like probably in the best shape of his life now, and like
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it, man, but like he's inspiring though for sure. Like I look at that and like he acts like he's still a teenager and doing all this stuff, and it's like
it's a completely different experience. Like having it, like I have 2 kids, and spending a day with them at like the zoo, I'm just like get home and I'm just like I am so exhausted from that.
Yeah.
But yet I can show up at Delmar Hall at 3 in the afternoon, unload equipment, and go out and play a rock show for 45 minutes and put every last bit of energy that I have into it, and it be nothing. There's something about the way that the adrenaline in the stage and just the feel of the live show gets, and I think that's especially what kept me and what got me really excited once we started talking about writing new stuff and starting to play a little bit more again, because I especially was really missing the live aspects. As a DJ, I paid to play other people's music, my own music, and you get that for the big events. Of course you get that feeling of power that you're controlling the crowd, and people with their hands up and stuff like that. But there is something in playing live music for someone and playing for the crowds that there's a feeling that does not match with that other feeling, and it's a feeling that I was just craving so hard.
It's a high, man. That's
It
why
really is.
That's why so many musicians turn to fucking alcohol, or drugs, hard drugs especially. Because they can't match the high of being on stage. Have you ever like felt full force adrenaline?
oh yeah,
Like
sure.
like for me, I feel because we play to tracks, right? So we have like these synth tracks, and I'm aware of it because there are 2 different feels that are going on in my body. Everything that you guys are doing is full speed. Everything I'm doing is half the speed, and it's the craziest fucking phenomenon I've ever experienced. And it's always we had it last night, and I'm up there playing songs that I know are like 120, 140 beats per minute, and I feel like I'm just dicking around. Like I'm just whiffing at it.
Yeah.
But I know that I'm playing 140 beats per minute. Like it's insane.
Yeah, having that adrenaline rush, you spoke exactly the way of how I could describe it too, because there's guitar parts, and the rhythm stuff that I have to play, like especially fast. And for the 3 months that I was rehearsing here in the studio with it, I was just like, how did I ever play this part that fast? Like when we wrote this, how did I ever play this that fast? And then suddenly, like, get on stage, and I'm just like, yeah, this is fucking easy. I can do this all day. Like,
it's a weird thing. The reason I asked you is because I've never really heard anybody else talk about it.
Yeah.
And I've played in cover bands, and I never had that feeling playing on stage or at a bar in a cover band. But I've had it on multiple occasions with Nothing Still, where like you're on stage and it feels like you're in some kind of time warp.
yeah.
And somehow I'm playing. My hands are just fucking all over the place, but they feel like they feel like half the speed.
Right.
And it's insane. I know I'm doing visual elements here on an audio,
It
but
looks really cool, just so everybody knows.
yeah. But that high is really like it's unbelievable, and that's why that's why we're jonesing right now after playing such an incredible show last night. We're seeing the pictures and we're seeing the videos from people and getting the responses, and
Responses have just been great.
yeah. I wanted to say that I think that where we matured is we were able to basically analyze, having the time, going back to your question from 40 minutes ago, having the time in between, it allowed us to go back and analyze things. And I know for me, there were choices that we made musically that I was like, why the hell did we do that? Because we were like, we need to do something cool here. Let's play fast as hell. Let's double the timing on this, or let's do this weird, interesting time signature right here, or the song structure is just really out there. Let's do that. And those are songs that I can't listen to. I can literally like you mentioned the third album we did. I can only listen to half that album. And because there are some things on the other half of it that I'm like, oh, why did we do that? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know now that we can correct those things and go back and revisit songs. Sure. And each and every one of us as musicians have been able to basically analyze ourselves like football players analyze tape and pick out the things that we were doing wrong and build on that. I mean, just between the show we did in August and the show last night, I mean, we were able to watch our performance, listen to our performance, and pick out the things that we did wrong. And we went up on stage and maximized on all of it. And the response has been unbelievable. And I mean, frankly, I mean, not to toot horns, but like everybody's been saying it's the best we've sound ever.
Yeah. And
that's exactly what I want to hear. And when I went back and listened to things, like here we played a show in August 2018 at Pops, and we had a recording from Pops in 2009, and I listened to the same song, and one is in our heyday and we're in our 20s, and one we are 10 years older and wiser, and the 2018 show blew the 2009 show out of the water. And I think that part of that was like ego, basically, and this is what bands could be guilty of, is that ego, basically believing that you're better than you actually are, and not having, basically just not being able to like look inward and know how to fix things yourself or like overanalyze yourself.
Yeah, I think just being like blind to it.
Yeah. Just believing you don't have to do things like vocal warm-ups or practicing or whatever,
that was definitely, and I for sure was guilty a lot of that because in our heyday, it's like when you have so many people around you telling you how amazing that you are every time that you're out at a show or something like that. Well, it's like, well, why do I need to rehearse then? Why do I need to be good at what I'm doing? Why do I need to better myself? Because everybody else already thinks that I'm awesome. Yeah. So, especially when it came from, coming back, doing for this show, like this show was really, really important to me because as a vocalist, it's like, if I'm going to fuck up, everybody's going to know that I'm going to fuck up. If you're a bass player, if you're a guitar player and you miss a note by like a split second, you catch yourself, most times people aren't going to notice that kind of stuff. But if you just flat out go out there and sing like shit, you're just, everybody knows it. And so I specifically made it a point for this show to go back to some of the vocal training that I had done in my past and take on a lot of new vocal techniques and practicing better vocal health overall, and make it a point that this show I was going to make sure that it was all on point this time around, and I think that was definitely part of the looking inward, piece of things. Is like, man, I go back and you see some of the old videos that you might find on like YouTube of old recordings of us or old CDs that got recorded of live shows, and it's just like, I feel like people then were just more in love with the antics of the shows, and they were more in love with the show aspect of it. They didn't really care that like it was shit, like that we perform like shit. And so now though it's cool because we can take those ideas though and we can mishmash the both of them and make them be a combination of being a great visual show while also being better at what we're doing. And that's something that I don't feel like we ever had both of those things at the same time.
I would say it's like creating an illusion in a way. Like, I've had people tell me this morning that we were better than Stabbing Westward last night, which is bullshit. But somehow we created an illusion. Like, I'm not agreeing with that statement at all. But there are people that walked away from that show last night believing that we were better than a fucking established band for over 20 years. Yeah. There's no way. But yeah, we basically pulled it together enough to where the visuals and the audio are finally on the same level, and they're basically being just assaulted with a complete live show. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
That's definitely, I feel like I've seen it happen a lot a lot of friends around town that are getting to that point where they're able to do that, stepping up the production, adding the visuals and the lights and all that stuff, and it really like it takes that show to the next level, like compared to just sounding good. You know, now you have all the stuff to go with it and makes it a complete package and stuff. So. Yeah. But yeah, man. Well, very cool. You can get involved with Nothing Still all over your social. We got Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We got
you find us all mostly at Nothing Still on Instagram, which is where you're going to find most of our stuff recently, especially because the Facebook algorithm isn't helping us out much. So you want to go to at nothing.still on Instagram, and then also our website is nothing-still. And yeah, we're on Spotify, iTunes Music, SoundCloud. You can find all 3 of our albums on those, and that's where we will be releasing all new music as well.
Yeah, hopefully in 2019 here we'll have some brand new Nothing Still tunes.
I hope so.
Plan on.
Yep. And yeah, keep an eye out. More shows coming soon, hopefully. So keep an eye out. But yeah, I appreciate you guys doing this, man. It's been a whole lot of fun getting to kind of chat. And,
yeah, it's great. It's been a long time coming, man.
Talking about some of these old stories and stuff. But yeah, man, I've had a lot of fun hanging with you guys. I appreciate you doing this, and hopefully we can do it again soon with some new music or something. So
definitely
debut something on here or something.
Thank you, man.
Sounds like a plan.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Bye, everyone.
That's what type on there. Rock Paper Podcast.
Rock Paper Podcast.
Rock Paper Podcast.
Well, yeah, that was it.